Here we are, guys, to 2.4. Today we're going to talk about factoring trinomials. So your objective, your students will be able to, by the end of this lesson, scholars, you should be able to factor trinomials in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, which is our standard form for a quadratic. When factoring trinomials, and again, trinomials here mean that it is three terms. When factoring trinomials expression, there are two important skills that we need to remember. The ability to multiply binomials by the box method or FOIL, and the ability to work with sign numbers. Sign number meaning my positives and negatives. So, exercise 1, I really want to review really quick how do we multiply these binomials. So I'm going to use the box method, which we talked about earlier. So, I'm going to write 3x plus 2, and I'm keeping the signs, 5x plus 7. Then I want to fill in my boxes. Remember, 5x times 3x is 15x squared. 5x times 2 is 10x. 7 times 3x is 7 3's 21x, and 7 times 2 is 14. So now that I have this, I need to combine my like term, my x's here, and then I'm going to have 15x squared, 10x plus 21x is 31x plus 14, and that's my final answer. So pause the video and try the second one on your own. Did you really remember how to do the box method? Great, now that you had a chance to try it, did you get this? 12x squared minus 23x minus 24. So let's pause and check it out. If not, let's move on. Make sure you get those. So we're going to talk about, whoa, give you the answers already. We're going to talk about how do we factor quadratic when a is equal to 1. Most of you remember this from Algebra 1. So whenever a is equal to 1, there's a few things that we need to do. First, we need to make sure it's in standard form. Standard form meaning f of x or y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c. Then I want to identify what's my a, b, and c. I want to multiply my a and c, and it has to be on top of my x, and then my b term goes here. This question mark means I'm going to find two numbers that multiply to give me AC, my term up here, and when I add those same numbers, I get my B term. Once A is equal to 1, I am going to write it in factored form. So let's see how this works. F of x is equal to x squared plus 5x plus 4. My A is 1, my B is 5, and my C is 4. So I know at the top it's a times c. In this case, 1 times 4 is 4, and my b term is 5. I need to find two numbers. When I multiply it, I get 4, and when I add it, I get 5. So 4 times 1 is 4, check. 4 plus 1 is 5. So when I write that in factored form, it's going to be x plus 4, x plus 1. Let's look at a few more examples. Example 3. Is this in standard form? No. So you're going to do the box method. I'll do it right here to show you. First thing that we need to check is x minus 2, x minus 2. And I want to break this down. This becomes x squared minus 2x minus 2x plus 4. So this, I'm actually going to rewrite it as x squared minus 4x plus 4. And remember that 4x came from minus 4x came from combining this. Then don't forget I had that minus 16 at the end, which I'm going to keep. So my final factored form is going to be x squared minus 4x. What is plus 4? Take away 16. This will give me minus 12. So let's get rid of this. So now that I have my standard form, I'm going to identify my A, B, and C. My A is 1, my B is negative 4, and this is negative 12. A times C goes on top, so this is minus 12, and my B term goes on the bottom. So I want to think of two numbers. When I multiply it, I get negative 12, and when I add it, I have to get positive 4. So those numbers are negative 6 and positive 2. Negative 6 times positive 2 is a negative 12. Negative 6 plus positive 2 is a negative 4. So because my a is 1, all I need to write in factored form is x minus 6 and x plus 2. And that's my trinomial factored. Let's try one more example. My a is 1, my b, I don't have a b term, so it's 0. Remember, b term is next to the x, and my c is 16. Is that possible? Of course. Now draw your x. 8 times c goes in the bottom, which is 16, and then my b term at the bottom. Two numbers, when I multiply it, I get 16, but when I add those numbers, I get 0. Now the trick is when there's 0 at the bottom, these two numbers are always going to be the same number. One is going to be positive, one is going to be negative. So this becomes minus 4 and plus 4. Again, a is 1, so my factored form is x minus 4 and x plus 4. Remember, conjugate pairs. Now this is where it gets a little tricky. How do we factor when a is greater than 1? So same thing applies for a few steps. So we check if it's in standard form, then I identify my a, b, and c. Multiply my a and c in the top, put my b term in the bottom. These question mark represents, and we're on step 5, look for two numbers. When you multiply it, you get AC, and add those same two numbers to get the B term. So now that I did that and I found this is where the difference. Since A, and I'm looking at step 6, since A is bigger than 1, what I need to do is replace my B term to whatever I find on these question marks. Once I do that, I'm going to factor the first pair and the two last pair and then combine like terms. So once I factor this, I have to combine like terms. So let's see how this works. 5 says, is it in standard form? Check. So my A is 6, my B is negative 35, my C is negative 6. Multiply it at the top, A times C, so 6 times negative 6 is negative 36, and then my B, negative 35. Two numbers, when I multiply it, I get negative 36, and when I add it, I get negative 35. So this becomes negative 36 and 1. Negative 36 times 1 is negative 36. Negative 36 plus 1 is negative 35. Now this is where it gets a little tricky. I need to replace my b term. So what I'm going to do is write 6x squared, and I want to replace it with these two. Minus 36x plus 1x or x, it doesn't matter, minus 6. Okay, I put a b because that's my b term. I'm going to take the first two terms and factor it. These have a 6x in common, a x minus 6 that is left over. Then I'm going to take my second two terms. They have a, what do they have in common? X and 6, so they have nothing in common. When they have nothing in common, we always write 1. And then what's left over? X minus 6. Now we want to know what sign goes there. This is going to be a positive. How do I know? So the key is whatever is in my parentheses here, it's always going to be the same. And how do I check this? Is if I distribute 1 to 6, I get a 1x, and then 1 to negative 6 gives me a negative 6. When I distribute these, I want to make sure I have the same exact thing. Now since these two have the same thing in common, I write it back one time, x minus 6, because in math we don't like to repeat. See these two things that are outside that we factored? What we're going to do is give them a parentheses by themselves. So all I did was take the 6x and the plus 1, that's why we need a sign, and we put it into a parentheses by itself. And here you go. That's all I need to do. Let's try one more. 6. My a, is it standard form? Yes, it is. So my a is 3. my B is 19, and then my C is negative 40. So A times C, 3, negative 120, and then 19 at the bottom. So the only hardest thing is for you to think of numbers. Two numbers, when I multiply it, I get negative 120, and when I add it, I get 19. So after thinking for a while, you will come up with some numbers, and then we're just going to play around. So two numbers that we can think about is 24 and 5. I know one of them has to be negative because I need to multiply at the top. So if I make this negative, let's check it out. 24 times negative 5 will give me a negative 120. 24 plus negative 5 will give me a positive 19. Now that I have this, remember what we have to do. Replace my b term. So this becomes 3x squared plus 24x minus 5x minus 40. And remember, take the first two term, and I'm going to look for what they have in common. I see there's a 3x in common, and x is left over plus 8. Good. Remember, distribute this. If I was to take this and go back like this, I will get what I started with up here, okay? Then I want to go ahead and take my second two term and see what they have in common. So this looks like they have a minus 5 in common. This becomes x plus 8. And remember what I tell you, these two parentheses here are always going to have the same exact thing in common. Again, if I distribute this, I will end up with what I started up here. Now that I have that done, we write those back once. See these two squiggly thing outside here that we factor? We're just going to put it in a parentheses, that's it. That's why we need the sign here. So x plus 8 in a parentheses, and then 3x minus 5. So pause the video and try exercise 7 on your own. So now that you had a chance to try, did you get your answer as x minus 6 and 2x minus 3? Remember, 8 times c is 36 minus 15. And I find my two numbers, replace my b term, and then I factor it out what they had in common. So now that I did that, I want you to go ahead and try the rest on your own. And remember, don't give up. I know you can do this, okay? Come see me if you need additional help, but you got this. I believe in you and I know you can do this. See ya. Good luck.